I'm joined now by Michigan State Senator and the author of the new book, Hate Won't Win, Mallory McMorrow. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I am too, and you're coming to me from a state where the incumbent U.S. Senator Gary Peters has opted not to run for re-election, and so there's been a lot of a flurry of activity and questions about your own future in the state. I know that this has been kind of a question that's been asked of you a lot over the last few years since you first went viral for your speech on the floor of the state Senate. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity right now to see if you have an announcement that you would like to bring to my audience and the base more broadly.
I certainly do. This is a big task ahead, especially in a state like Michigan. But yes, I am in. I am running for U.S. Senate.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, first of all, on the decision to run. Why did you decide that now was the moment to run? Again, like you went viral several years ago, and so you've been in this conversation for a really long time. Why was now the moment that you decided to jump in?
Now is exactly the right moment. And for me, this is about a new vision for not only the state of Michigan, but also for the Democratic Party. I think a lot about what happened here in Michigan in 2024, where, yes, we have Senator Alyssa Slotkin, and that's amazing. But Michigan also elected Donald Trump. And what I think Democrats missed is how much people are really struggling. This feels like too often the Democratic Party and the leadership out of Washington is the party of well, actually. When people are telling us that they're
Yeah.
struggling, we say, well, actually, things are really great. I am a millennial. I am part of really the first generation that by and large is doing worse than our parents. So there are so many people who do not believe in an American dream, who cannot afford to buy a house, who cannot afford to start a family, let alone thinking about retirement or going on a vacation. And I'm excited to have the opportunity in this campaign to lay out a very clear vision for a new American dream as a stark contrast to the idea of make America great again. We're not going backwards, we are going forward, and we are rebuilding what it means to be a Democrat and what it means to be a Michigander in a way that hopefully the rest of the country is going to take notice of.
Well, I want to dig into that a little bit. This idea of you being a millennial, I'm a millennial as well, and again, like we graduated into the Great Recession. This was
Exactly.
like we were the first generation to graduate into a worse like environment than our parents did, and to have worse expectations for job prospects, for healthcare, whatever it may be, than previous generations. Of course, like the notion of being able to buy a house or raise kids. I mean, there is a reason for that. And so, can you speak on this idea as you speak about like creating a new Democratic Party, this idea of generational change and the Democrats' unwillingness to embrace it, and how it's landed us kind of in the spot that we're in right now?
So I think what we missed, at what Democrats missed, and really the Democratic leadership who got us to this place, and this is no discredit to anybody who is in leadership, but it is a very different time. To your point, you and I did graduate right into the recession, and we're struggling. I graduated with a degree from the University of Notre Dame with tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. I had had a great internship. I did not have any job prospects. I applied to probably more than 300 jobs. I worked at Urban Outfitters for minimum wage, folding clothes with other kids who were at college nearby who they asked me where I went to college, and when I said Notre Dame, they just looked at me and they were terrified. Like, if you're here, what hope is
Yeah.
there for the rest of us? And I spent a few nights living in the back of my car. The Affordable Care Act did not exist yet. I did not have health insurance. I have ADHD, and I left that largely untreated at the time, which probably made getting a job even harder. But there are just so many people in our generation and other generations who don't believe that the American dream is real. We're a generation that did everything right. If you work hard enough, you go through school, you go to college, or you go to a trade school, that it still doesn't add up. And that gave a window for Donald Trump and JD Vance and Elon Musk to rightly recognize people's frustration and anger with government and with systems, but it gave them permission to blow it up. So what we have to carve out as a new generation of Democratic leadership is to acknowledge the status quo did not work. And it does not work for a lot of people. We still have to defend the institutions, of course, but we have to build them into something new. It's not enough just to say that Donald Trump is ruining it, but there's an opportunity right now when I think even Trump voters here in Michigan look at what Donald Trump is doing and they say, this is not what I voted for. I did not vote for gutting of Medicare and Medicaid and the Department of Education. In a state like Michigan, people have no idea why we are fighting with Canada. Canada is our neighbor, Canada is our friend. But we need new leaders who feel and understand the fact that that trust is broken and is not there, acknowledge that things were not working, and are ready to lay out a vision for building something new that works for all of us.
I would note that while Michigan doesn't understand why we're fighting with Canada, neither do the other 49 states or most countries around the world or Canada itself understand why we're fighting with Canada. I want to throw a clip on the screen of the speech that you made in the state Senate.
Growing up, my family was very active in our church. I sang in the choir. My mom taught CCD. One day, our priest called a meeting with my mom and told her that she was not living up to the church's expectations and that she was disappointing. My mom asked why. Among other reasons, she was told it was because she was divorced and because the priest didn't see her at Mass every Sunday. So where was my mom on Sundays? She was at the soup kitchen with me. My mom taught me at a very young age that Christianity and faith was about being part of a community, about recognizing our privilege and blessings and doing what we can to be of service to others, especially people who are marginalized, targeted, and who had less, often unfairly. I learned that service was far more important than performative nonsense like being seen in the same pew every Sunday or writing Christian in your Twitter bio and using that as a shield to target and marginalize already marginalized people. People who are different are not the reason that our roads are in bad shape after decades of disinvestment, or that healthcare costs are too high, or that teachers are leaving the profession. I want every child in this state to feel seen, heard, and supported, not marginalized and targeted because they are not straight, white, and Christian. We cannot let hateful people tell you otherwise, to scapegoat and deflect from the fact that they are not doing anything to fix the real issues that impact people's lives. And I know that hate will only win if people like me stand by and let it happen.
That kind of energy, I think, is so perfect for the time that we're in right now, because there was a sense of fight. And you spoke about this quite a bit in your book, Hate Won't Win. And admittedly, that was the chapter that I went to first. Like when I saw in the index that the speech was there, immediately went to that. Can you speak on this idea of a Democratic Party that has largely ceded this ground of being able to fight back for so long? I mean, look, since I've been in Democratic politics, I've watched the Democrats contend with people like Mitch McConnell and just know that we're just not going to be able to win, either because we don't have the tools, or if we have the tools, we're not willing to wield them. And yet you have folks who wield power so aggressively and shamelessly in a world where Merrick Garland doesn't even get a confirmation hearing because, God forbid, we have a confirmation hearing in an election year. And yet at the same time, you've got voting taking place right now, and Amy Coney Barrett can get a hearing and confirmation onto the court. And so can you speak on this idea of fight as it relates to you and your campaign?
So something that's really important to me is knowing when to fight and how to fight, because I also feel like people right now are just so exhausted by the noise. It's not enough just to pick a fight every single day. You have to fight and fight for the right things and fight on your own terms. And that, I think, is something that Democrats really need to build up this muscle, and why I feel so passionately about the fact that we have to have our own message. We have to be talking about a new American dream so that we're fighting on our own turf. What Republicans are really good at is defining Democrats and defining the fight. And, I think it comes from a place of goodness and meaning well, but we are constantly on defense. When you think of how fights work, are you on defense or are you on offense? And something that I did in that speech now a few years ago I talked about myself. I talked about the fact that I was raised by my mom in the Catholic Church and what service meant. And even though what was lobbed against me was a smear that is typically levied against the LGBTQ community, I chose that moment to speak to a majority of people and convince people who look like me and have a background like me and are not directly impacted that we have another way forward. I was very intentional in saying people who are different are not the reason why healthcare costs are too high, or why teachers are leaving the profession, or why housing costs are too high, or why the roads are in disrepair. To take back the narrative and frankly point out what's happening right now. And Donald Trump is excellent at this. It is finding a scapegoat to deflect from the fact that they are not doing anything to actually improve people's lives. So it might make you feel good to throw a punch at somebody, but are you taking the narrative back? Are you getting back onto a playing field that you want to be on? Because people don't want what Donald Trump is selling, but they also don't know what the Democrats stand for. So we have to choose to fight and fight to take our own narrative back.
And that is so spot on, and we have been the victims of that for so long, from as recently as the plane crash over the Potomac, where Republicans immediately came out and claimed that it was the result of DEI, going back to the, you spoke about Obamacare. When that was first released, because Democrats left this vacuum in messaging, in their narrative, Republicans were able to brand it as death panels, and it was responsible for Democrats getting slaughtered in the 2010 midterm election cycle. So for the better part of, since I've been doing this, since I've been alive and paying attention to politics, Democrats have always been slow to respond, and Republicans have always been able to capitalize on those vacuums, on those voids left by the Democrats' inability to message, inability to be aggressive, inability to get out there and fight and stand on business. And the result of that is that we are always, always, always on defense. We are always trying to bat back these villains that Republicans will put forward and claim are the cause of all of the problems in the world, from Hillary Clinton to George Soros and everybody in between.
That's right.
I think while I was reading your book, it really was a story of hope, and I'm curious how you keep the faith in a moment where everything does seem to be going in the wrong direction. I mean, even in the chapter about your speech, you spoke about the fact that you had largely resigned yourself to the fact that you weren't going to even run for re-election. And I think, objectively speaking, things have gotten much worse since that moment. And so, how do you how do you keep the faith? And how would you recommend that a lot of people who are watching right now, who do feel a sense of hopelessness and despair, and who don't have faith in the political process, hell, don't even have faith that our election systems are going to hold up in 2026 and 2028? What's your message to those people?
So I think what is really incredible about this country is that despite how bad everything has gotten and how hopeless and powerless we could feel sometimes, I have to tell you, I've been having coffee hours and town halls in my district, and we had one just at a little shop in town. And the last time myself and the state rep held the same coffee hour, we had maybe 12 people. We had a lovely conversation around a table. The last time I did this, a couple of weeks ago, we had more than 200 people show up. And they are showing up en masse, and it's not just out of anger. They're not screaming at me. They're not demanding to know what I'm going to do. Because what I learned, and I detail in the book, is there were limits to what my title would allow me to do. But when I have people come out to these town halls, they're not asking what I'm going to do. They're asking what they can do. Who can they call? How do they use their voice? How do they write to a member of Congress? Is a letter more powerful than a form? What can they do to make a difference? And we've seen, even in this Trump administration, think about the first federal funding freeze. When that order came down and people showed up to their Head Start programs to drop their kids off and the doors were closed, they sounded the alarm very quickly. They started calling local news reporters. They were getting on the air. And within 48 hours, the Trump administration rescinded that order. To me, that is nothing but hope. That shows that all of us are a lot more powerful than we think we are, that this administration is not all powerful, that the margins in the US Senate and the Congress are very narrow, and that all of those elected officials at the end of the day have to go back to their voters and justify the work that they're doing. So that's what keeps me going is every time I go to an event, or I've started doing this thing on my Instagram, every week I throw up an AMA and ask me anything. I pop up a question box. I get hundreds of questions every single week from people who are paying attention, they're plugged in, they're engaged, they're putting their hand up and saying, "Put me in, coach, I'm ready." And if that doesn't give you hope, I don't know what does.
Well, that's the perfect place to leave off. How can people who are watching, listening right now help your campaign?
We have a big task ahead of us. This is going to be the biggest battleground race in the entire country. Please go to McMorrowforMichigan.com. Find out more. Follow us on social media. Tell your friends. I am going to need everybody on board to get this done and show the rest of the country there is a new way to do this.
Well, I also want to put on the screen right now just a little moment from the book that I thought was so interesting, because this was years ago, after you had made that speech, and you put into the book a bunch of examples of what people were telling you, and they wrote, "Don't stop. We need a million more of you. Keep up the fight. You're a breath of fresh air. Give them hell. Thank you for giving me hope for the country I love. Please don't stop. We are with you." And it's a nice full circle moment right now for all of that encouragement that you got quite a few years back. That now you're stepping up into this position where I think you'll have an even bigger platform. And I know a lot of folks have been really looking forward to you making the announcement that you've just made. So best of luck on the campaign trail. For anybody who's watching right now, highly recommend that you grab Hate Won't Win, and please support Mallory McMorrow for the U.S. Senate. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Brian.